You're a little overqualified for this role, don't you think? Warren said, his smirk thin as paper. Danielle didn't flinch. She met his eyes and replied, only if experience intimidates you. And just as the tension peaked, the door swung open, and in walked the CEO. At 9:57 a.m., Danielle Mercer sat perfectly still in a stiff leather chair that wasn't built for comfort. Her navy blouse was tucked flawlessly into high-waisted slacks. Her pumps were quiet but commanding, and the leather folder in her lap had been worn at the edges from years of use. Not because she hadn't earned anything new, because she only kept what worked. She was angled slightly forward, legs crossed neatly, a calm expression painted across her face like porcelain. The waiting area outside Conference Room 3 at ArcLight Innovations was sleek and sterile. All white walls, brushed steel, and overpriced art that tried too hard. Danielle didn't fidget. She didn't scroll through her phone. She didn't need a distraction. She was the distraction, and she knew it. The receptionist, a young woman in a cropped blazer and glossy acrylic nails, had barely looked up when Danielle arrived. Here to drop something off, she'd asked with a bored voice and an even duller glance. Interview. Strategy Division. 10 a.m. Danielle Mercer. The name hadn't sparked anything. No recognition, no interest. Just a tight-lipped nod and a wave toward the row of chairs like she was assigning seating in a DMV. Danielle thanked her anyway. Years of restraint make that easy. From where she sat now, Danielle could hear the occasional laughter through the glass conference rooms and the soft buzz of keystrokes echoing down the hall. She glanced at the frosted glass doors in front of her and then back at the folder in her lap. She wasn't nervous. She had nothing to prove. Not anymore. At exactly 10:03, a man with a buzz cut and khakis strolled by, caught sight of her, did a double take and smirked. Deliveries around the back, he muttered, just loud enough to be heard, not loud enough to be called out. Danielle didn't rise to it. She held his gaze and replied smoothly, good to know. I'll pass that along to someone who's actually here for a delivery. His smirk faltered, but he kept walking. A minute later, a young woman in a lavender blazer approached. Danielle Mercer, she asked, eyes already flicking over her clipboard. Right this way. Danielle rose without a word. As they walked down the hallway, she caught glimpses into offices, people typing, chatting, avoiding eye contact, measuring glances, calculating expressions. The hallway smelled faintly of toner and lemon-scented floor cleaner, a poor attempt at masking tension. They reached Conference Room 3. The door opened. 3 people already seated. Danielle stepped in, pinstripe suit on the left, buzz cut at the center, red lipstick on the right. Danielle smiled politely. Good morning. Danielle Mercer. She extended her hand. Only red lipstick offered hers back briefly. Pinstripe gave a curt nod. Buzzcut didn't even stand. You're a bit overqualified for a mid-level strategy role, aren't you? Pinstripe asked before she even sat down. Danielle folded herself into the chair with elegance. I don't think experience should ever be seen as a liability. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing more. The interview began not with curiosity, but with resistance. The kind that drips slow like syrup sweetened with fake smiles and sharpened questions. We see here you haven't held a full-time role in 4 years. Red lipstick said, flipping pages like she was hunting for a typo. Correct, Danielle answered calmly. My father was terminally ill. I stepped away to provide full-time care until he passed last fall. Silence. No condolence. Not even a nod. Buzzcut leaned back, steepling his fingers like a man playing chess with himself. And how do we know you're still sharp? 4 years is a long time in this industry. Danielle met his eyes directly. I've consulted on 5 major restructuring projects since then. Quietly, remotely, but effectively. Would you like specifics? Maybe he replied unimpressed. But real strategy requires immersion. You can't just dip in and out. Danielle gave a slight smile. You'd be surprised what a person retains when they helped write the playbook. That shut him up for a beat. Then Pinstripe chimed in. You were a senior strategist at Calder and Rhodes. Why apply here? This isn't a top 5 firm. Danielle turned slightly toward him. Because titles don't build futures? Vision does. I'm more interested in the foundation you're laying than the label on the door. Red lipstick raised her brows, tapping her pen. Well, we're very results-driven here. We need team players, not lone wolves. Danielle's voice stayed even. The best results come when all voices are heard. But I understand not all rooms are built to hear everyone. Buzzcut let out a breath, almost a laugh. Let's talk metrics, he said, flipping a printout. You claimed a $6.5 million annual savings from vendor consolidation in your last full-time role. That verifiable, absolutely, Danielle said. And I have the documentation if you'd like it. Pinstripe waved a hand. We'll circle back. Then he asked, how do you handle pushback from a team that doesn't trust your leadership? Danielle responded without hesitation. I listen first. I ask better questions. I don't assume the issue is me until I understand the issue is me. Red Lipstick scoffed lightly. Sounds nice in theory, Danielle nodded. That's the thing about theory. It only stays theory if no one ever tries it. Then Buzzcut leaned in again. So you start by being soft. Danielle tilted her head. No, I start by being smart. Silence. A beat too long. Red Lipstick sat straighter. You seem very direct. Some here might call that combative. Would you be willing to adjust your tone if asked? Danielle didn't blink. Is it my tone or your comfort with a woman who doesn't minimize herself? The air in the room shifted. The temperature didn't change, but the weight of it did. They weren't interviewing her. They were testing her, trying to find the crack, the moment she'd snap. But Danielle wasn't built for their comfort. She was built to endure, to win, to lead. The questions kept coming, the same tired challenges. Why this company? Why now? Why you? And just when the energy in the room had dipped to its most toxic, the stainless steel door handle clicked. No knock, no warning. The door opened. In stepped Marshall Quinn, CEO of ArcLight Innovations. No tie, gray suit, calm face. He didn't glance at the panel. He looked only at Danielle. Miss Mercer, he said, stepping forward, hand outstretched. Thank you for coming. We've been looking forward to this. Buzzcut shifted. Pinstripe stammered. Red Lipstick went pale. Marshall turned to them. The executive chair seat is still open, he said simply. If she'll have it. Danielle stood slowly with practiced grace. She took his hand. Marshall, she said steady. It's been a while. He nodded almost to himself. You still know how to shift a room. He looked back at the panel, then gently gestured toward the hallway. Let's find a quieter place to talk. Danielle gathered her folder, straightened her blouse, walked out without looking back. The interview was over, not because she'd failed, but because they had. Danielle walked beside Marshall Quinn in silence. The hallway hushed behind them like the tail end of a thunderclap. The door to conference room 3 slowly faded from her peripheral vision, but the weight of the moment hadn't left her shoulders, it had simply shifted. Marshall didn't say anything as they moved past curious glances and strained smiles. He didn't need to. His presence was a signal, and the building was already decoding it. They stopped 2 doors down where a brushed nickel plaque read, Private Executive Use Only. Marshall opened the door without ceremony, held it for her like it was routine, and gestured her in. The room was modest but precise, a polished walnut table, 2 chairs, no glass walls, no distractions. A place where decisions got made, not performatively, but intentionally. He closed the door behind them and exhaled, not out of exhaustion, but out of awareness. You haven't changed, he said, pulling out a chair for her. Danielle sat slowly, folding her hands on the table. That's what everyone hopes to hear after 4 years off the grid. Marshall gave a soft chuckle and took the seat across from her. No, I mean that look, that stillness. You had it back then too, 12 years ago in that godforsaken boardroom when everyone else was panicking. Danielle's expression didn't change, but a flicker of memory passed through her eyes. You mean when Renovatech tried to swallow your company whole without reading the fine print? Exactly that, he replied, leaning back slightly. You caught what our entire legal team missed. You gave me leverage I didn't know I had, and you did it without asking for credit. I never forgot that. Danielle looked at him level. I didn't do it for credit. I did it because the deal was built to fail, and I don't like watching good companies crash for preventable reasons. Marshall nodded. And that's why you're sitting here now. She raised an eyebrow. You're saying this wasn't just a dramatic rescue mission. Not quite, he said, pulling a sleek folder from his briefcase. Your resume landed on my desk 2 weeks ago. Not through HR, through Kira Langston. Danielle's lips curved ever so slightly. She was an intern the last time I saw her. Now she's senior financial analyst. She told me you mentored her when no one else paid attention. Said you taught her how to build strategy from the floor up. She also said you'd scare the hell out of our leadership in a good way. Danielle crossed her legs slowly, measuring her next words. So this offer, it's not about optics, not even remotely, Marshall said. You're not here to check a box. I'm offering you the executive chair of strategic initiatives because we need a culture architect, not a mouthpiece. She studied him for a long moment. Full authority top to bottom, he replied. Policy revisions, hiring reforms, internal accountability. You define it. Even if it makes people uncomfortable, she asked. Especially if it does. He leaned forward. You'll be unpopular in the beginning, they'll whisper. Some will fight you, others will wait you out. But they won't outlast you if you're as serious as you used to be. Danielle didn't blink. I'm not here for applause. I'm here for alignment. And I don't plan on negotiating with Rod. Marshall smirked. Then we're speaking the same language. Outside the room, the building buzzed in a new way. Desks that were humming a minute ago had gone suspiciously silent. Slack channels pinged. Emails flew. People were piecing together the moment they just witnessed the woman who walked in for an interview had just left the room with the CEO, and not a soul had followed. In conference room 3, Warren adjusted his tie 3 times in 1 minute. Bridget sat frozen, the pen she'd been tapping now clenched in her hand. Zane finally broke the silence. Is she? Warren didn't answer. He just stared at the door. Danielle, meanwhile, leaned back in the executive chair across from Marshall. No arrogance in her posture, just clarity. Before I accept anything, she said, I want to see everything. I want full access to internal audit reports, promotion records, exit interviews, complaint logs. And I want unfiltered copies, not the sanitized versions you give HR. Marshall didn't flinch. You'll have them before the day ends. I also want one-on-ones with every executive director, 60 minutes, no assistants, no agenda, no exceptions. Done, he replied. You should know. This kind of reset will rattle people. Then it needs to happen louder. She closed the folder slowly. You said you remember what I did 12 years ago. What I remember is how fast silence spreads when people feel outmatched. I don't plan on filling that silence with slogans. I'm filling it with action. Marshall tapped his fingers against the wood. I'm not just bringing you in to shake things up. I want you to rebuild the foundation. Start over if you have to. Then let's be clear, Danielle said. I won't sit through empty meetings. I won't put my name on performative policies. I won't wait for permission to correct injustice. If I accept this will be different. That's exactly why I asked, he said. He stood. You'll get the offer in writing by end of day. Take the weekend. Start Monday if you're ready. Danielle stood too. You'll get my answer after I've read what you send. But if I do walk through those front doors again, it won't be to play safe. Good, he said, because I'm done playing safe too. They walked out together, no fanfare, no dramatic speeches, but eyes followed them, some covertly, some boldly. The receptionist stood taller this time. People in open cubicles stopped typing. A pair of junior analysts whispered as Danielle passed, and one of them nudged the other. That's her, she whispered. She's not just interviewing. She's taking something back, the other said. Danielle exited the building like she had entered head-high steps, steady eyes forward. She didn't stop to replay anything. She didn't check her phone. She drove home in silence, the city of Dallas stretching wide in the windshield, its skyline reflecting the sun like a row of sharpened knives. That night she spread papers across her kitchen table, printed records, confidential memos, diversity stats, internal complaint metrics. She read for 3 hours without pause. Patterns emerged. Bias cloaked as process. Gatekeeping dressed up as protocol. Leadership turnover that mirrored a revolving door for anyone who didn't match a mold. None of it surprised her, but all of it strengthened her resolve. When she finally leaned back, she didn't smile out of triumph. She smiled because now she knew. She knew exactly where the rot lived, and more importantly, where to start pulling the threads. She picked up her pen, jotted down a few notes in tight, purposeful script, and circled one phrase at the top of the legal pad. Visibility without voice is not representation. Then she underlined it. Twice. There was no doubt in her mind now. This wasn't about restarting her career. This was about redesigning the game entirely. Monday morning arrived without ceremony. The sky over Dallas was still gray when Danielle Mercer pulled into the lot at ArcLight Innovations, the same building where just 10 days earlier, she had been asked if she was there for deliveries. Today, no one asked. They didn't have to. She walked through the front entrance at exactly 7:58 a.m., wearing a deep emerald blouse, sharply cut black slacks, and low heels that didn't click, they commanded. Her portfolio was tucked under one arm, the same one she had used in meetings across 3 continents. And the moment she stepped inside, something shifted. The receptionist, the same young woman who once waved her off with thinly disguised disinterest, stood as Danielle approached. "Good morning, Miss Mercer. Welcome back." Danielle nodded, not out of coldness, but clarity. "Thank you. Is Kira in yet?" "Yes, ma'am. She just got in." "Great. I'll head up." No wasted words. No need for theatrics. The elevator doors opened and those already inside stepped aside without prompt. Some nodded, some smiled politely, a few avoided eye contact. It didn't matter. Danielle wasn't here to be liked. She was here to build what should have existed all along. By 8:30 a.m., she was in a closed-door meeting with every senior director and VP across ArcLight's leadership chain. 11 in total. Marshall sat to the side, not at the head of the table today. That space was hers. Danielle didn't bring a slideshow. No charts, no glossy mission statements. She brought a yellow legal pad, a pen, and one question. When was the last time, she asked, her voice calm but unmistakably clear, you were truly challenged by someone who doesn't look like you? Silence, not discomfort, not confusion. Silence like recognition, like a mirror they hadn't asked for, was now being held up. She let the pause breathe, then added, because if we can't answer that honestly, then we've already told ourselves everything we need to know about how this company has grown or hasn't. One director shifted uncomfortably. Another leaned forward, eyes narrowed. With respect, one of them said, a man in his early 50s with a steel gray tie and a carefully maintained air of neutrality, I think most of us are open to being challenged. That's not what I asked. Danielle interrupted, not sharply, but without giving the room a place to hide. I asked when it last happened. More silence. She continued. I've read every promotion report, hiring file, and disciplinary review over the last 5 years, and the patterns speak louder than anyone here has. So let's be clear, this isn't a takedown. It's a rebuild. From policy to practice to culture. Marshall didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Danielle had the floor and, more importantly, the authority. Over the next 30 minutes, she laid out the framework, mandatory bias response training for all levels, comprehensive exit interview audits to track invisible attrition patterns, and anonymous feedback loops designed to unearth truths without fear of retaliation. Department heads would no longer handle internal grievances without oversight. Promotions would be vetted not just on performance, but on mentorship, impact, and inclusion behavior. She paused only once to let the room catch up. If any of that sounds unnecessary to you, she said plainly, you should think twice about staying in leadership. It wasn't a threat, it was a choice, and it was long overdue. That same week, Danielle began holding open office hours. Any employee, any level, could meet with her one-on-one. No assistant, no appointment. The first week, no one came. The second week, 3 people showed up quietly, cautiously. By the third week, her assistant had to build a schedule to manage the overflow. They came with stories. A Latina analyst who'd been passed over 3 times in favor of newer hires. A Black engineer whose patent-worthy concept had been reassigned to a more visible team. A trans intern whose onboarding documents still listed policies last updated in 2017. Danielle didn't just listen. She took notes, followed up, sent quiet memos, made louder moves. The changes were subtle at first. Language shifted in policy manuals. Outdated practices were stripped clean, but those paying attention felt it. Something was different. Accountability wasn't theoretical anymore. Meanwhile, whispers about her appointment continued to ripple. Bridget, the red-lipped interviewer from conference room 3, spent 10 minutes pacing outside Marshall's office before finally knocking. I'd like to clear the air, she said carefully once inside. I may have come off too. You don't need to finish that sentence, Marshall said flatly, but you will sit through a full review of every interview you've led for the past 2 years. Is that really necessary? No, he said. It's overdue. Danielle never brought up that interview again. Not in meetings, not in passing. Not even when she sat across the same people who had once tried to reduce her. She didn't need to. The building remembered. People began to walk straighter. Interns stopped whispering when they passed the executive floor. Junior staffers started speaking up in meetings they used to sit quietly through. Danielle's presence didn't spark fear, it sparked accountability. One afternoon, Kira Langston walked into Danielle's office carrying 2 coffees. Word is someone in marketing thinks you're secretly the new CEO, she teased. Danielle smiled softly. Tell them I don't need the title. I'm already doing the job. Her office wasn't cluttered. Just a framed photo of her father on the windowsill, a closed laptop, a glass water pitcher, and a folder labeled Culture Review. No plaques, no spotlight, just purpose. Every policy she rewrote came with clarity. Every hire she approved came with weight. She wasn't building buzz, she was building permanence. 30 days in, Danielle stood at the edge of a company that now bent toward change. Not dramatically, not loudly, but permanently. She didn't need a stage. She just needed a seat. And now she had one. The real kind. The kind no one could take away because they never gave it in the first place. At 7:03 p.m., that evening, long after the halls had quieted and the offices had emptied, Danielle closed her laptop, turned off the light, and slipped on her coat. No announcement, no applause, just quiet resolve in every step. As she exited through the front doors of ArcLight Innovations, the receptionist, still at her desk wrapping up, looked up and smiled. Good night, Ms. Mercer. Danielle returned the smile. Good night. See you tomorrow. And she would. Not because she had to, but because now this company wasn't just hers to lead. It was hers to transform. And she wasn't done yet. Not even close. Danielle Mercer's journey isn't just a story about a woman reclaiming her seat at the table. It's a reminder to all of us that real power isn't given, it's carried. When the world tries to define your worth based on gaps in your resume, the tone of your voice, or the assumptions in someone else's mind, you have every right and reason to challenge that narrative. The biggest lesson here is this: don't shrink to fit the room. Build the room that fits your worth. Danielle didn't walk in demanding validation. She walked in with preparation, lived experience, and purpose. When others dismissed her silence as weakness, she used it to listen, observe, and plan. And when the moment came, she didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard. For anyone who's ever been underestimated, interrupted, or made to feel like you had to prove your presence before you could even speak, you are not the exception, you are the shift. You are what happens when patience meets power, when grace meets grit, and when a lifetime of being overlooked becomes the reason no one else ever will be again. And perhaps most importantly, Danielle's story teaches us that leadership isn't about volume or visibility. It's about accountability. It's about lifting others as you rise. She didn't seek applause, she sought alignment. And through steady steps, strategic action, and unshakable confidence, she turned a culture of quiet bias into a system of visible change. So whether you're re-entering the workforce after years away, standing at the edge of a boardroom where no one looks like you, or simply tired of being talked over, walk in anyway. Sit down anyway. Speak with the strength you've earned and the clarity you carry, because the rooms that resist you often need you the most. Thank you for watching and listening to today's story here on US Instructive Stories. We're deeply grateful for each of you who take the time to not only hear these narratives but reflect on them. If Danielle's journey spoke to something in you, whether it reminded you of a struggle, an injustice, or your own quiet comeback, please share this with someone who needs to be reminded of their value. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that speak truth, justice, and transformation. Until next time, keep walking with purpose. You belong in the room.